When it comes to healthcare, we tend to think that good intentions are enough. But today, we're going to dig into a really critical shift in patient care, one that moves way beyond just cultural sensitivity and towards a much deeper, more active standard: cultural safety. Okay, just take a second to let that sink in. This story is, well, it's jarring. And it's a perfect real world example of what culturally unsafe care looks like. The actions taken here weren't based on facts, they were driven by incredibly harmful assumptions. And it forces us to ask a really tough question. Right? How can a system that's literally designed to heal people end up causing this kind of profound damage? To even begin to answer that, we have to look at what happens when help, even with the best of intentions, actually ends up hurting. So let's break this down. What exactly went wrong in that scenario? We need to really unpack this idea of culturally unsafe care. Think about it. The healthcare workers just skipped the most basic, crucial steps. They didn't check a patient's history, they didn't ask questions, they just acted on a stereotype. And this isn't just about one person's bad judgment. It points to a systemic failure to create a safe space for that patient in the first place. And this problem goes way beyond a single emergency room. It shows up every time a patient avoids getting care because they're afraid of being shamed or dismissed. It also pops up in our universities, where Indigenous students studying to be our future doctors and nurses feel so marginalized that many of them don't make it through their programs. So the issue doesn't just hurt today's patients, it hurts tomorrow's caregivers too. So what's the solution here? Well, it's not as simple as telling people to be more sensitive. It actually requires a fundamental change in our entire approach. And that big shift is called cultural safety. Now, this concept isn't actually new. It was first developed way back in the 1980s in New Zealand, and it came directly from the Maori people's own experiences with the healthcare system. The goal from day one was incredibly powerful: to support self-determination and to decolonize healthcare. And what that really means is challenging and taking apart the old colonial power structures that were causing so much harm. Today, these principles are being used to improve care for Indigenous peoples all over the world. Okay, this slide right here is maybe the most important distinction we need to make. Cultural sensitivity is pretty passive. It's basically just being aware that other cultures exist. But cultural safety, that's active. It demands that we look at power imbalances, that we confront discrimination within our institutions, and that we truly understand how colonial history still affects healthcare right now today. So here's the formal definition. And the single most important part of this is who gets to decide if care is safe. It's not about the provider's good intentions, it's about the patient's experience. An environment is only culturally safe if the person receiving the care feels safe, period. Their experience is the only thing that truly matters. Making this happen isn't just about a few individuals trying a little harder. Nope. It requires a massive, coordinated effort to change the entire system from the inside out. So let's look at the framework for how to actually do that. Real lasting change has to be built on three main pillars. You need action from the top, from government. You need a total transformation inside our educational institutions. And you need deep, meaningful involvement from key stakeholder groups. And this table really shows you just how big this effort has to be. We're talking about everyone, from Health Canada and provincial ministries to the medical schools that train our doctors and the bodies that regulate them. And most critically, it requires a true partnership with national Aboriginal organizations, the groups who actually represent the communities themselves. Everybody has a role to play here. Okay, so that's the high-level plan. But what does this actually look like on the ground? For a doctor or a nurse in their day-to-day interactions, how does this translate to the bedside? Well, it can start with simple acts of respect. Let's say a patient has a sacred item. You don't just take it off, you ask for consent first. You try to find ways to work with it, maybe by taping it securely to their body. Or even better, you empower the patient or their family to care for the item themselves. It's all about giving up a little control to show a lot of respect. It also means we have to rethink those rigid hospital rules, especially around family. Cultural safety means being flexible with visiting hours because you're recognizing that for so many people, family and community are a huge part of healing. It's about finding a private space for those important conversations and, whenever possible, including Aboriginal staff in the care process, as long as the patient agrees, of course. And this kind of respect is perhaps never more critical and at the end of a person's life. A culturally safe approach means you allow time and space for important protocols to be performed. It means you consult the family before you act, It means you work with them to make sure communication is clear and respectful during what is an incredibly difficult time. So, when we actually commit to this new standard of care, the impact doesn't just stop with one patient or one community. It creates this amazing ripple effect that makes the whole system better. And really, this is the ultimate takeaway. When we make care truly safe for Indigenous patients, we raise the standard for all patients. Why? Because the core principles of cultural safety, things like clear communication, respect, understanding power, and empowering patients, these aren't niche ideas. They are the absolute building blocks of excellent healthcare for every single one of us. So I'll just leave you with this question to chew on. Are we building a healthcare system that's focused on having good intentions? Or are we building one that holds itself accountable for creating genuinely safe outcomes for every person who walks through its doors? Because those two things are not always the same.